Okay, so if you've got the cash, then, I mean, this does seem like the quickest option into getting residency in a foreign country. What other countries are deemed sort of popular destinations for this kind of scheme?
There are many schemes. I think most people are fairly educated. The people who are looking at these options have actually done quite a lot of homework and a lot of research. There's Cyprus, there's Malta, places like St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean, destinations that South Africans don't particularly understand. There's lots of concern around the Cyprus and the Malta schemes, because what's happening is people are essentially buying citizenship. And there's a fundamental difference between the Portugal solution and buying citizenship. The EU, the greater EU and the stronger countries within the EU don't like people selling passports. So it makes it a very easy backdoor into Europe for wealthy people who are not necessarily desirable citizens. And so why we like Portugal is that by making the investment, you acquire a 5-year residency right. And throughout that 5-year period, you have to prove at regular intervals that your investment is still in the country, that you're still an upstanding citizen, you have got a clear criminal record, and that you in fact stay the minimum stay requirements, which are on average 7 days a year.
Okay.
So that's another huge benefit for South Africans, and I'll go into that now. But for us, what's really important is that the route to permanent residence and ultimately citizenship fits in with existing Portuguese legislation. So it's not that the government's created a short circuit by putting capital in that they'll give you a passport. Talking a little bit about the stay requirement, that is the most important thing for South African clients, because most South Africans want to stay in South Africa. People who can afford to participate in these sort of schemes have generally got quite established businesses here. They love South Africa, but they're concerned about the future, particularly for their children. So our typical client is a well-established business person. They make the investment, they become resident, and at least they've sort of started allaying concerns about their future. Whether they're ever going to go and live permanently in Europe, I doubt it, but at least they've sort of bought themselves a plan B.
And now, does it work in the reverse for European investors that want to gain residency in South Africa, or is it a bit stricter here?
Most countries have got schemes. South Africa is not particularly looking to give away citizenship for investment, and there are ways that investors can come into South Africa, but not per se along the same lines as these type of schemes.
Okay. Now, going this route as opposed to, you know, putting in the time, you know, working for a company, sort of ticking all those boxes. I mean, what I was going to ask is, I mean, if you can't afford the minimum, what is the minimum property rate? And if you can't afford that, what are the other options? Are there other options?
The minimum property investment here is 500,000 fresh capital into Portugal, which is a substantial amount of money. We're sitting at around 14 Rand to a euro currently, so we're looking at over 7 million Rand. There are not that many people who can just quietly drop 7 million Rand into a property in Portugal. There are other opportunities on skilled visas into places like the United Kingdom, into places like Australia, but those countries are really becoming more and more difficult to get into for obvious reasons. The problem that a lot of these so-called desirable destinations suffer from is they've got very attractive benefit schemes, and there are a lot of people who are trying to get into places like the UK and into Australia simply so that they can live off the benefit system. So those countries have made it more and more difficult. For instance, if you want to get residency by investment in the United Kingdom, each individual has to invest £2 million, which is probably close on 40 million Rand, and that's not per family application like Portugal, but it is per individual, so depending on how many of you there are. And then the other problem with that is you actually have to physically go and reside in England.
Yes.
So that in itself opens up to a totally different market.